At one point in time, Earth was home to many types of humans, not just one. Across continents, different hominin species walked upright, crafted tools, hunted prey, and raised their young. But today, only one remains. The question is not just who we are, but why we are the only ones left. According to evolutionary biology, survival is not guaranteed to the strongest, but to the most adaptable. And adaptability, in the case of Homo sapiens, came not from brute strength, but from a distinct kind of intelligence. Homo sapiens did not have the largest brain among human species. Neanderthals, for example, had larger cranial volumes on average, but brain size alone does not dictate success. What mattered more was the internal architecture, the wiring that enabled abstract thinking, complex language, long-term planning, and above all, social collaboration. Cognitive flexibility became a critical tool in the face of uncertainty. Whether facing climate shifts, unfamiliar terrains, or new predators, our ancestors adjusted rapidly. They innovated when others stalled. They imagined alternative solutions rather than relying on inherited patterns. But intelligence in isolation is not enough. The evolutionary edge of Homo sapiens also lay in our exceptional capacity for social cohesion. Early sapiens lived in structured groups. They coordinated roles, delegated tasks, and shared not just food, but information. Elder members passed down knowledge about animal migrations, medicinal plants, or safe shelter. The young learned through imitation and storytelling. It was a living chain of memory, one generation reinforcing the survival of the next. This transmission of knowledge, cumulative and generational, allowed Homo sapiens to break free from the trial and error limitations faced by other species. Each child didn't need to rediscover fire. Each tribe didn't need to relearn the danger of a specific berry. Once discovered, the lesson stayed, embedded in memory, encoded in culture. This capacity also shaped behavior under pressure. Faced with drought, Homo sapiens didn't just move. They observed patterns in weather, tracked water sources, created rituals around scarcity. Faced with famine, they diversified diets, crafted better hunting tools, developed preservation techniques. Where others might endure or perish, sapiens adapted, sometimes preemptively. Beyond practical skills, their mental landscape enabled symbolic thought. They could imagine dangers before they occurred. They could mentally rehearse group hunts or shelter construction. And when disaster did strike, they mourned, buried, remembered, turning experience into meaning. Another key advantage was communication. While some other hominins may have had rudimentary vocalization, the structure of the sapiens' larynx, diaphragm, and brain enabled a leap in verbal expression. With full language, they could plan over distances, share strategies, settle disputes, and teach in detail. Cooperation scaled up. So did group cohesion. It is not merely that Homo sapiens were smarter, it's that they could combine individual minds into collective intelligence. Each person, a node in a growing web of insight. Each tribe, a living network of shared experiences. In evolutionary terms, this meant speed. New techniques didn't spread slowly through mimicry. They could be taught. Innovation wasn't confined to individual breakthroughs. It became communal. Adaptation accelerated. This combination of brain, language, and cooperation allowed Homo sapiens to outperform rivals, not necessarily through violence, but through outthinking, outmaneuvering, and outlasting. It also created resilience. When a skilled hunter was injured, others could provide. When an elder weakened, their knowledge still benefited the group. When children were orphaned, they were often raised by the community. Survival was no longer only the result of personal strength. It became a group achievement. And that group, over time, became something more. A culture, a memory, a shared identity. By the time Homo sapiens began expanding out of Africa, they were not merely a species with sharp tools and good reflexes. They were a species capable of cognitive cooperation, of building social worlds layered over physical ones. In the game of survival, this proved decisive. While other species of human lived and died by local adaptations, Homo sapiens carried something more flexible: ideas. Ideas that could migrate, replicate, and evolve faster than genes. That mobility of mind allowed them to cross deserts, navigate mountains, and endure ice ages. The extinction of other human species was not inevitable. But in the end, only one kind of human could create stories about their own survival and pass them forward. That kind was Homo sapiens, and we are their echo, their memory, their advantage, made visible. Part 2, the survival race. When many humans walked the earth 100,000 years ago, Homo sapiens weren't alone. Across the globe, multiple human species coexisted: Neanderthals in Europe, Denisovans in Central and East Asia, Homo erectus in Africa and Southeast Asia, and smaller island dwellers like Homo floresiensis and Homo luzonensis. In southern Africa, Homo naledi carried on quietly with a strange blend of ancient and modern traits. This was not a world ruled by one species, but a mosaic of human diversity, each species a different path in evolution. They didn't live in isolation. Fossil and genetic evidence shows they met, competed, and interbred. Today, up to 2% of the DNA of many non-Africans comes from Neanderthals. In Southeast Asia and Oceania, Denisovan DNA can make up to 5%. These are traces of real interactions, not just of contact, but of shared ancestry. About 2 million years ago, early Homo species began migrating out of Africa. As they spread, they adapted to new environments and gradually became distinct species. Some, like Homo erectus, thrived for nearly 2 million years. Neanderthals endured the Ice Age for over 300,000 years. They were not primitive, they were survivors. When Homo sapiens began expanding out of Africa around 60,000 to 70,000 years ago, they encountered other hominins, not as strangers, but as cousins. Some interactions were peaceful, others were not. Some led to hybrid offspring and the mixing of lineages. Coexistence wasn't just about sharing space. It was a web of survival strategies. Each species had unique tools, diets, and social lives. Competition might have meant fighting, but also learning, borrowing, and adapting. Even as some species disappeared, their DNA lived on. Modern humans are a genetic mosaic, carrying genes that influence our immunity, metabolism, and cold tolerance. The idea of a pure Homo sapiens lineage is a myth. We're the result of many evolutionary threads woven together. Over 30,000 years, all other human species vanished. Some due to climate, some outcompeted, and others, like the Denisovans, absorbed completely into our bloodline. Homo sapiens survival wasn't guaranteed. It was the product of intelligence, adaptability, and social skill. We are not the only heirs of human evolution. We are its survivors. And its synthesis. We were never alone, and in a way, we still aren't. Part 3. Invisible weapons. How Homo sapiens gained the edge. Survival isn't just about strength or climate. For Homo sapiens, the key was how they lived, thought, and communicated. Unlike other human species, early sapiens formed larger, more organized groups, sometimes up to 100 people. These groups weren't simple bands. They had structure, shared roles, and clear division of labor. Hunters, gatherers, caregivers, and elders all contributed. This social complexity led to greater efficiency. Central to this was language. Sapiens developed complex vocal communication, far beyond simple sounds or gestures. They could describe the abstract, plan for the future, share stories, and teach. Through language, knowledge traveled across individuals and generations. Words became powerful tools, as vital as weapons. Language also transformed how humans thought. It boosted memory, focus, and collaboration. It turned families into communities, and communities into cultures. Alongside speech came innovation. Homo sapiens crafted a wider range of tools. throwing spears, fishing hooks, snares, needles, and more, each tailored for specific tasks. Their tools weren't just functional, they reflected creative thought. And sapiens went further. They made things with no survival purpose: cave paintings, beads, carved figurines, even possible toys. These showed symbolic thinking, the ability to give meaning to objects and images. Symbolism was a major leap. It allowed for rituals, identities, and beliefs. It connected people through shared imagination. One powerful sign of this is burial. Sapiens often buried their dead with care, pigment, and grave goods, hinting at spiritual ideas. Other species, like Neanderthals, showed some symbolic behavior, but sapiens did so more frequently, with more complexity and consistency. Culture, once formed, grew. Carvings carried stories, symbols linked tribes, rituals strengthened unity. Compared to other humans, sapiens showed faster cultural change, greater diversity in tools and art, and stronger group connections. This wasn't about being superior, just different. Sapiens weren't stronger, but their invisible tools, language, organization, and culture, gave them a lasting advantage. They didn't just adapt to the world, they reshaped it. They didn't just survive, they shared ideas, and ideas, unlike genes, evolve in a single lifetime. That made all the difference. Part 4. The vanished humans, echoes of evolution's side paths. Not all human species made it to today. Many once thrived, only to vanish, leaving bones, tools, and lingering questions. Some disappeared completely. Others live on in our DNA. Homo naledi surprised scientists when remains were found deep in South Africa's Rising Star Cave. Small-brained and primitive in appearance, they may have deliberately buried their dead, despite lacking tools or signs of symbolic behavior. They weren't ancestors, but an isolated branch that survived as recently as 250,000 years ago. Homo heidelbergensis, appearing 800,000 to 500,000 years ago, was a crucial transitional species. From them came both Neanderthals and early Homo sapiens. With bigger brains and advanced hunting skills, they used fire, built shelters, and perhaps even held early rituals. In the end, they didn't go extinct. They evolved into us and our cousins. Homo floresiensis, or the Hoggets of Indonesia, stood just over 1 meter tall. Likely descended from Homo erectus, they adapted to island life through dwarfism. Though tiny, they made tools and hunted, and survived until around 50,000 years ago, vanishing around the time modern humans arrived. Homo erectus, one of the longest-lasting human species, spread from Africa to Asia and lasted nearly 2 million years. But on Java, isolated and technologically stagnant, they disappeared roughly 108,000 years ago, a victim of evolutionary stagnation. Denisovans are known mostly from DNA found in a Siberian cave, a sister group to Neanderthals. They interbred with both sapiens and Neanderthals. Though their physical appearance remains a mystery, their genes are still present in parts of Asia and Oceania, influencing immunity and altitude adaptation. And then there were the Neanderthals, our closest relatives. Intelligent and resilient, they used tools, fire, clothing, and even created art. They cared for the sick and buried their dead. Yet after Homo sapiens arrived in Europe, Neanderthals faded. Disease, climate, and competition played roles. Some interbred with sapiens. Their DNA lives on in us today. The extinction of these species was rarely abrupt. It was a slow process of absorption, displacement, or failure to adapt. Their stories reveal evolution's complexity. Not every branch led to survival, but each contributed to what we are. Homo sapiens didn't endure because we were the strongest, but because we adapted best, shared ideas, and stayed connected. These vanished humans weren't evolutionary failures. They were experiments, and parts of them live on in us. Part 5. Lessons from the past, the legacy within us. Homo sapiens did not outlast all other human species through brute strength. They were not the fastest, nor the most physically resilient. What ensured their survival was something else: the ability to connect, to adapt, and to innovate. They formed large, organized groups. They communicated through complex language. They passed knowledge across generations. They shaped tools, art, and belief systems, building a cultural infrastructure that proved more durable than muscle or instinct. But their survival did not happen in isolation. Modern humans carry within them the genetic signatures of other ancient humans. Neanderthal DNA can be found in people across Europe and Asia. Denisovan DNA exists in the populations of Oceania and parts of Southeast Asia. These aren't footnotes. They are evidence of contact, interaction, and genetic exchange. The boundaries between species were not always barriers. In some places, Homo sapiens did not replace, they integrated. What emerged was not a pure lineage, but a hybrid one. Humanity today is a composite, shaped by migrations, mixtures, and inherited adaptations. Some of those inherited traits still affect us. Genes from Neanderthals influence skin pigmentation, hair type, immune responses, and even risk factors for certain diseases. Denisovan genes may assist with high-altitude adaptation, vital to peoples living in the Tibetan Plateau. The legacy is not just biological, it is also cultural. Cave art in Europe and Asia may have been created not only by Homo sapiens, but also by Neanderthals. Burial practices, symbolic behavior, and early tools may have developed in parallel or been shared across species. We cannot rule out the possibility that elements of our belief systems, rituals, or artistic expression were inherited from other kinds of humans. The origin of myth and meaning may have more than one root. The record is incomplete. Much has been lost, but what remains suggests that the line between us and them was never as clear as once believed. We are the last surviving human species, but we were not always alone. Others came before us, some stronger, some smarter in specific ways, some adapted to climates we could not endure. Yet, one by one, they disappeared. Some vanished into extinction, others vanished into us. Their bones are scattered across caves and valleys. Their tools rest beneath layers of soil. Their genes flow in our blood. Their echoes remain in the shape of our skulls, the structure of our hands, and the instincts we carry in times of crisis. The story of human evolution is not a tale of dominance, but of persistence. It is not a triumph of the superior, but the survival of the adaptable. The final question is not scientific, it is reflective. If we were not alone in the past, are we ever truly alone now? Inside every human alive today are traces of others, genetic fragments from species long extinct, cultural whispers from forgotten minds, survival strategies born in climates no longer recognizable. We did not build civilization from nothing. We inherited fire, tools, and cooperation from a deeper past, a past built by many hands, not just our own. Human history is not a straight line. It is a river with many branches. Most of those branches ended. Only one reached the present. But the waters of the river carry sediment from every fork, every stream, every ancient source. Those lost paths are not gone. They are part of us. We are not the beginning. We are not the end. We are the continuation of something much older and much more diverse. And perhaps that is the greatest legacy of all.